at CT. DTB has the golden key to mortgages.
DTB has the golden key that opens many doors to many houses.
Okay.
And they are saying this: come talk to us, write to us. And when you write to us or talk to us, and talking involves going to one of our many branches, or when you send us an email, that is still talking to us through email, we will tell you the following. One, we as Diamond Trust Bank have partnered with Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company. And why have we done this? So that we can make an offering of mortgages that is second to none. We will offer you, let's start with the painful bits that people bother about. What's the interest rate? We're saying this, look, up to 10 years, we'll offer you 9% on that mortgage. 9%, that's what you're required to pay. If you want a mortgage for 25 years, then we're saying it'll be 9.75. And DTB is still saying, look, we haven't finished telling you what we're telling you. We're telling you that you will not experience any hidden charges. If you pay well in advance of the due date for your mortgage, we will not penalize you. There'll be no penalties. And they're saying, look, you may be wondering, but I am not employed. I don't have a pay slip. It doesn't matter. I'm in the diaspora. It's far away. Yes, we know. I have a pay slip. Whatever it is that you have, you are eligible for a conversation. If you are salaried, you will be offered up to 105%. 105.05, so that all these other costs that go with getting the money is paid for.
Taken care of.
Yeah, talk about the diaspora, 80%. Now, surely, is it really difficult to email mortgages@dtbafrica.com? No, that is the email that you need to send. If you're able to, walk to a Diamond Trust branch near you.
And somebody will take care of it.
They will take care of it lovely, nicely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Now, tell us about the devil and the deep blue sea. Okay, I mean...
Yes. No, you put it well. The devil moved from the deep blue sea. Now, he's on a dining table with you and you're saying, if you're going to eat with him, eat with a big spoon. This is the proverb. If you are eating with the devil, you must use a long spoon.
The philosopher wants to ask you, why are you eating with the devil in the first place?
Yes.
And I, who is also a philosopher, will ask you, and why not?
And why not eat with the devil?
Well, simply because there remains no profit in the endeavor.
In whose endeavor?
There's no one who's met the devil and come out on top.
That you know of?
Well, other than Jesus Christ, everyone else.
Everyone else that you know that met the devil didn't come back.
Yeah.
Okay. You know some interesting folk, man.
You know, village ancestors exist everywhere.
I'm telling you, they show up in groundnut shells or in a bottle.
So, if somebody is referring to their version of village ancestors,
village uncles, then it's okay.
Uncles, well done, uncles.
It's never your father.
No. It's never your mother, it's an auntie.
Wicked stepsister, something, mother-in-law kind of thing.
And you're never the wicked stepsister. You're always Cinderella.
Of course. Find me my glass slipper.
Yeah, irony is not as...
Happy World Radio Day. February 13th is always recognized as World Radio Day. And why is that? That in 1946, the United Nations decided that, look, we needed to have a way in which we spread positive news and information, and it was deemed Radio Day. Rather, United Nations Radio then was established, right? And it was a significant year because it was the year after the end of the Second World War. And they said, look, we've seen propaganda having been used during the Cold War. We saw propaganda used during the World Wars. It's about time that we use this actually for peace messages and messages of coming together in concert and uniting. And so we've celebrated World Radio Day ever since then. And it gives us an opportunity to remember some of the things that we've been able to do through radio. Radio remains, it is the oldest, but it still remains the widest and most far-reaching media form in the world today. Still most widely used and the most widely reachable. And it just gives us a minute to be able to say, what some of the achievements that we've been able to reach through radio. So indeed, yes, a lot of the messages that are spread the world over still use this traditional form. It's still traditional in its makeup, but very modern as well, in its practice and its in form of its delivery. Just looking at journeys that each of us have been through, getting on the radio. I remember, graduating university, and in my final 3 months of getting my degree, I worked at a small radio station, and I was an ENG. I was an electronic news gatherer, and that's what I did. I read the news on radio for about 6 months before I started doing my shows. And I can't tell you really that if somebody hears your voice later and sees you later and then is able to make the connection. But really, for me, the impact has been that you are able to spread news, information, but impact to thousands of people at one time that you wouldn't be able to ordinarily if you were on your own. So it's a fantastic tool. And though I think about the times that I've actually shed tears because folks have taken this magnificent tool and have used it, sadly, for evil. We have examples of that. World wars, propaganda has been spread over the radio. Genocide, propaganda over the radio, and that has resulted in the death of many people, unfortunately. Still remains a tool that we should be able to use for good. Still remains a tool that we should be able to get behind the mic every day is a great privilege and a great honor to be able to do that. And so I celebrate this World Radio Day and hope that we can continue to use it for good, for positive, for change, for impact. TT?
One of the most amazing things that I experienced as a child in primary school was there were lessons that we actually had on radio. The radio was stationed at the headmaster's office. The headmaster was a gentleman called Mr. Carvalho. And at that certain, there was a speaker in our class room. And at that particular period, it would be switched on. And you would actually be in a classroom and you'll be attending to a lesson that is on radio. Yes. But as we grew older, one of the things that perhaps endeared us to radio most, because we learned to love music, was the early evening music. Continuous music. I've been trying to remember what that particular period was called.
Sundowner.
Thank you. See? Yeah. Sundowner. My goodness, one looked forward to the sundowner. One listened to delightful radio. And that particular aspect of radio and listening, the vehicles then were vehicles, but they didn't have radio. It was only in the 1960s, late 1960s, when Kenya started importing Japanese cars. There's one car called Toyota. It came with a radio. Prior to that, radio you listened to in the house. But of interest, when we went home to visit grandparents, there was a period in the evening for I think about an hour when you would actually listen to radio in your vernacular. But what it was all about was bereavement.
Yeah, announcements.
And everybody tuned in to hear what happened, who died, when they died. Now, you're talking about some of the remotest places you could actually think of. And as long as you had a radio, you could actually listen. The impact of radio, in fact, gets even more interesting when you look at countries like Australia. Vast places. And people live in such diversity, in such distances that learning in a school environment becomes impossible. Very many people who live in these vast outbacks were able to actually have an education because of this particular tool.
Indeed.
The radio. Yes.
Mark?
My first memory of radio is me sitting in front of my parents' radios. I think I was probably 5 or 6. And I broke it.
Okay.
Because I was looking for the man who's inside the radio speaking to us. Well, went on to break many things. But radio was the first thing I broke. And I thank God I broke it because it gave me a curiosity for how things work. Radio for me made me curious. I was curious to listen to the BBC when it used to come at some point during the day, because that's where I connected with the world. And being a child of the 80s, radio was our mainstay for a long time, until the grand monumentous event when my parents finally bought a TV. So important was it that we used to watch TV with our neighbors to the window. But radio still was the biggest source of information, news, and being a Luya, salams.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
It was such a big part of our life. I remember listening to salams. Not that my parents ever got salams, ironically enough, but hearing Wepuhulu saying hi to Nangila was interesting. But in my adult life, the curiosity that radio put in me, and then the career path I took, I was obsessed with how things work. And then I got to work in the background of radio in so many ways, having worked in politics, and realizing that the stories that radio tells are still potent and cogent in terms of not just informing the public of the goings on, but also in terms of shaping the narratives that people believe in, and projecting ideas and concepts into minds. And the beauty of radio is this. Yes, I know there's visual radio today, but the thing about radio is there are two things. One, you listen to it actively and you are participating. But oftentimes radio, you listen to it passively, and it's constantly giving you subconscious ideas that sometimes make you pause and go like, that is interesting. And radio has a long future in terms of how many forms it's taken. I consider podcasts radio over the internet. And for World Radio Day, I am so grateful for the ability of radio to still be able to give hope to locked up people in locked up countries.
Yep, there you go.
That's the power. It's literally a sign of freedom for people who literally work for their governments, enslaved, and they listen to the radio and they think, my goodness, there's hope outside my country, and there's hope for my country yet.
Absolutely. And I think that it's just apt for us to say, a happy World Radio Day, and we think about, just localizing things here, and that just look at one of the fallen greats, Leonard Mambo Mbotela, who passed away a few days ago. Definitely one to be remembered, who used his skill through this medium of radio to touch many, many a life, and to send many, many messages that will be remembered for a very, very long time. So happy World Radio Day 2025, even as we go and continue spreading these messages through this very versatile platform. And we take that break with Delamere Yogurt. And you know what? There are moments when you can do and say, and we can do that this morning as we think about what impact radio has had and what we're able to do with that. It's a breakfast on the go, or it's taking a break from study, or taking a break from work. Are you sitting in traffic? Well, it's the perfect time for you to have your Delamere yogurt. It's available in different exciting flavors. Strawberry, actually real strawberries, vanilla pods, or wild berries with actually the real berries. Choco chips, lemon biscuit, pineapple coconut, pear caramel, apricot orange, and honey. So get it at a store near you and indulge in the moments. All right, we're getting into other conversations this morning. It's an opportunity for us to remember that there are certain things that are happening around the country, and we're going to come off of some of the conversations that we saw that are making headlines today. And one of those is this issue around whether it is the majority, whether it is the minority, whether it is parliament, whether court orders matter, whether the things that are said by a magistrate of the High Court or a judge of the High Court actually are going to be taken and put into practice. At the moment, it is leaving people in a bit of a tailspin because, all right, a court which has one would agree, high powers for judgments is an arm of government. It is not the proverbial stepchild or the abandoned love child of the executive and the legislature. No, it is not. It is an arm of government, and that the executors of this are the judicial officers. Now, when things come out of the court, the assumption, or actually, you know what, not even the assumption, the practice should be that what the court says is going to be put and implemented. If that is the case, why has it been so difficult then? Let's take this parliament issue. If the court has said, for example, that one coalition or one party is actually in the majority and that an individual did not have the right to oversee and then proclaim certain things in 2022, that meant that at one particular time, one party was and then remains to be in the majority. It should have been cut and dry. It should have been that you walked into parliament after they came from recess on Tuesday and that they said, well, the current majority leader vacates, and the one that is supposed to be there as a result of the court pronouncements should come in. Why did we come in and start to have conversations about whether or not it's the majority, whether we go back to the speaker, who, by the way, was said by the court that, sorry, uncle, you cannot be Speaker of the National Assembly while also being party leader of Ford Kenya. You have to choose one. And from all interpretations, the one that you held before the other one is the one that you should actually keep. So this position of speaker, you should actually drop. My question is, and I think it is something that now sits right on constitutionalism, why is it so difficult to take the pronouncements of a court, the arm of government that is responsible for this, and practice it? Why is it so hard?
It's inconvenient. It's inconvenient
to the people who should implement
yes, it. It's bothersome. I mean,
it's an irritation.
It goes against what it is you want to do, so you ignore it. I mean, if the court pronouncements were to their liking, they would harp on how it is they are law-abiding citizens and they would not stop talking about it. But the moment it is inconvenient, it tells you to do something you don't want to do, or it points you in a direction you don't want to go, or it forbids you from doing something that you've chosen and which you find profitable to yourself. And you know you can get away with it. Of course you'll ignore it. Yes.
And you know what is interesting is the fact that because Parliament is the originator of laws, they never write consequences into the laws they can break. So they'll say the majority party should be this, right? And they not write and say a speaker who ignores this shall be found guilty of A, B, C, D. That is the biggest problem. Remember that Parliament, in all its houses, runs afoul of the Constitution, even in gender matters. Cabinet is afoul of the Constitution in gender matters. Many county committees run afoul of not only the gender rule, but also the integration of different tribes in the CECs. You find CECs in a certain county are all 90% one tribe, no diversity. And yet they continue to exercise their duties because there is no consequence for politicians. So what they do is they make sure if you steal a chicken, you serve 5 to 7 years for a chicken. If you are found of stealing billions, it is 80 million shillings or 4 years in jail.
The thing with some of these issues is that, again, it lands right back at the doorstep of the judiciary. Because one would ask, for something that would bear such weight, and I believe we presented this question to Nelson Harvey when we had that conversation, is that why would it take so long for a decision of such a nature to be made? That you know that you're dealing with minority and majority issues when it comes to legislation in the House of Parliament, but then why would it take 2.5 years down the line for you to now give a judgment when things have been solidified, whereby legislation has already been carried out, where decisions have actually been made? And then you come down later and you say, yes, the appeal or the petition that was brought before the court, we've actually found that a status 2.5 years ago, we're actually going to bring it about in 2025. 2 years to another election. What do you think was going to happen? Were things actually taken into consideration? Did you think that it was going to be any different from what we saw yesterday, for example, where the speaker ruled that Kenya Kwanza remains the majority party despite court ruling? What did they do? They counted the people who said they've moved to Kenya Kwanza, counted the people on the other side, and they said, actually, look, the numbers. So whether you say something or not, look at the numbers that I'm dealing with right now here in this plenary. Look at the numbers. And I've actually been able to say that Kenya Kwanza is in the majority. So by simple majority, we are the majority. And so they say, we're going on with this. So despite, not even despite, in spite of what the court said, we are the majority. So we move. And Speaker does what? When he rules, it becomes... And he said, we're in the majority. There's nothing that you can actually do.
That's where he's wrong.
You see? But in his
It isn't
thinking,
as though there's nothing that can be done. Not really. It is a crying shame, especially when the speaker himself is a lawyer.
Yes.
A senior one at that. He's not a neophyte. It's not as though he graduated from law school yesterday.
Yes.
So if this is his interpretation of the law, and he's the Speaker of our National Assembly, what then does it say about the decisions that are made within the National Assembly and which he is supposed to be the final arbiter?
It says a lot. It says a heck of a lot, because one would ask the question, all right, so how many decisions along the line are taken into consideration when we take a lot of these decisions into consideration and they're not decided with the law in your foresight, that it is on a whim, that is what you decide that day that is going to be because you are in that position. So now you want to ask yourself, was he right in making the declaration that he made yesterday vis-a-vis what the court says? And then you have to say, well, legislation is handled by Parliament, arm of law. Courts come from under the judiciary. Arm of government. Courts under the judiciary, arm of government. Like I said, nobody is the abandoned love child. These three arms work in tandem with one another. Who is right over the other?
Let me just dial it back. The mess in Parliament runs quite deep. When you vote for your MP, you simultaneously vote for him to take a party position. Correct? So much so that if an MP exits a political party, he should seek...
Wait, you vote for your MP to take a party position?
Yes. Because if an MP today quits from his political party, his seat becomes vacant. Right? Therefore, it is not an MP who moves from one side to the other. It is a party. If an MP belonging to Jubilee decides to side with UDA, or belonging to Ford Kenya and decides to side with Azimio, the natural consequence should be they seek a fresh mandate. Are we together that far?
Continue.
Right? When Moses Wetangula decided to count heads and not count coalitions, he was blatantly ignoring the laws and the hygiene of his own house. So the disrespect of arms of government is not just that he finds the judiciary something he can ignore, but he is also disrespectful to the same arm of government for which he is leader. That is how big a mess that is.
But I have to ask, did you really expect that come yesterday, that when they, or the day before, when they went into the house, did you really expect that Moses Wetangula was going to actually say, actually, you know what? I am the leader of Ford Kenya, so let me step down from my position as Speaker of the House. One. And also, did you expect that Kimani Ichung'wah was actually going to say, actually, you know what? According to the court ruling, I am no longer the majority leader, so let me step aside. Did you expect that these individuals were going to do this as a result of the... Let's not talk about what the law says. Let's talk about common practice. Did you really imagine that these individuals were going to step up, rock up yesterday and say, actually, you know what? The court has said so, the court has said, which you would expect to be. But if you take into consideration political and how it has been over the last 10 years and what we've seen with courts here, there, and the other, do you think that they were going to actually show up yesterday and say, okay, yeah, you know what, court has, given their ruling, let's step aside and let business continue with new people at
Yes, I did.
You expected that they were going to do that?
I did, because ever since last year, 25th of June, it wasn't a wind of change, it was a tornado of change that visited us. And it pointed to something fundamental shifting. As politicians, I would have hoped that they would understand that this tide that we speak of, this cheese has moved. The status quo no longer holds. So if you are a politician and you are determined to hold on to the past, because that's what it is, then clearly you're not a very bright politician. Because you're actually abrogating the very, very things that would work in your favor and in your survival. You have set in motion the very thing that will undermine you, the person who has made that decision. That's what you've actually done. So yes, I would have thought that just in the name of survival, in the name of self-preservation, they would look and say, I think this is time for us to do something different. But clearly, they are stuck in the past.
And your expectations have been dashed against the rocks.
Oh, my friend, have they just been dashed? Now, they can wait for the consequences of the action. Because there will be consequences.
One of the consequences that we are seeing, what Azimio MPs are now saying that they're going to threaten, well, not that they're going to threaten, they have threatened that they will kick out Wetangula in a supremacy fight. After he made his submissions yesterday, they were overtaken as the Speaker ruled in accordance with Standing Order 68. After the question for the approval of the committee had been put, the matter cannot be withdrawn without leave of the House. The team would later be approved. And in a subsequent press brief by a section of Azimio MPs, the legislators complained of contradictions in Wetangula's hearing. Asked whether they would be impeaching the Speaker, others said, yes, we just said it, we will. Mohammed Junet said, it is going to be messy, noisy, and it is going to have casualties. From the way Parliament is being handled, it is getting smelly. We don't see any broad-based action in Parliament. We can already smell our first casualty. He went on to say, we have noted contradictions in the Speaker's ruling on the Jubilee Party. He said, it is in Kenya Kwanza. How? Now today he says it's in Azimio. I can assure you that this ruling is another one that will be quashed.
The truth is that what Kimani Ichung'wah, Speaker Wetangula did is a political idea in this country. I have stolen it, therefore it is mine. There is no politician who, whether it's a physical thing they've stolen or something else that they've gotten afoul of the law, that they're willing to give up at any point in their lives, even when faced with the blank truth to their faces. Now, this is not a political question. It is also a legal question. If the courts have declared that a certain party is in the majority, then you go ahead and constitute certain constitutional committees in the House. Some which must be led by the majority, some which must be led by the minority, correct? Now, these committees, when they then go ahead to do the work of the House after the court ruling, how much of what they do should be considered legal. Remembering that in this country, we've set up the precedence that even when the laws skip public participation, they are supposed to be struck down. So now you want to create a situation where every single sitting of parliament, every single one, every matter or in parliament, because the House Business Committee is set up by the Constitution and has to be led in a certain way. If the leadership is wrong, what business can the House do moving forward that is ever legal?
Or what business has been done that would be then considered illegal? Let's take a break on that point. It is 23 minutes to 8 o'clock. We're having a conversation about, okay, so when the blatant ignoring of court orders or refusal to implement what court orders have come about, we see it now knocking at the very door of legislation. We see it knocking at the door of representation. We see it knocking at the door of oversight. And you have to ask questions, which way are we going if that's the case? It's Kenya's biggest conversation. It's 22 minutes to 8 o'clock. More after this.
Celebrate love